Welcome to the UnScripted Authentic Leadership Podcast, a podcast we're seeking to lead change while also seeking to understand. We're also here as a platform for leaders to come together to unite, to develop and empower other leaders in the areas of business, family, and community. I'm your host, Lafayette Lane, joined by my co-host, John LeBron, and today we are joined by a special guest, Chris Williams, who has joined us to have an amazing conversation about the secret to building a successful side business. Chris Williams is the host of the T.W.A.C Podcast, a podcast designed to help the struggling entrepreneurs, network marketers, and small business owners take their businesses to the next level. Chris' life mission is to help all men focus on growing up and leveling up. And today he has joined us right here on the UnScripted Authentic Leadership Podcast. Chris, thanks for coming on.
Hey man, I feel good. This is great. Let's get into it, man. I'm happy to be here. I definitely appreciate y'all having me, man. This is a dope platform. You guys have been. I like this. This is powerful.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I know John feels the same way. Let's get right into the conversation, man. You have an amazing few things going on. You have the podcast. You are a business owner. You're a coach. And where did that passion come from to help men and struggling entrepreneurs? Where did all that come from? Can you give us a little bit of your backstory, how you got to this point where you are today?
Yeah, it actually started because I spent 13 years serving in a church. My what's interesting is probably '04 is actually when I first moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. And when we moved, it was because we were helping build a satellite campus. And we ended up building like a 20,000 square foot church, 3 different, services on a Sunday. It got really large. And the thing that I remember the most during that time was always like, it's exhausting and there's a lot to do and you do a lot of things. But the one thing I always remember is going, man, the human condition is in bad shape. And so I've developed this, I guess, just this empathy behind why people show up the way they do, right? Why do people, show up angry? Why do people show up lethargic? Why do people show up happy? Why do people wander? Right? Like I just used to be curious about like, what is it about when people come into a space that the things that they before they got there, right, are really impacting their ability to be present. Right. I think that was the first thing. Then my corporate career, I've got an extensive learning and development background. And so in doing a lot of training, I realized I was not necessarily interested in like training people on a book that didn't really make a whole lot of sense and just kind of parakeeting some information. I found out from one of my managers one time because I kept asking questions about the people. Like I was just always curious about people. And they said, hey, I think you probably are more interested in organizational psychology. And I was like, the heck is that? And they was like, you need to go check this stuff out. So I started looking at organizational psychology. I started doing the rabbit hole dance down behavioral science and neuroscience. And it was like, oh, I actually like this. Like, like I like seeing what makes people tick, right? Like I like understanding why people do what they do without need to, without judgment. It's just, I like to understand, right? Like I don't necessarily, I'm not looking to judge it. I just like knowing, oh, that's the reason why that person may feel like that. That's the reason why that person may operate like that, right? And it just became something that was like amazing.
Chris, I want to go back to the first thing that you said because I think that's powerful. You said you moved to serve. And I think that is so overlooked in today's society, the power of servitude. Can you speak to how important that is as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as coaches, as business managers, CEOs, and even in your field, the psychologists and so forth, the importance of having the attitude and the mindset to be a servant first?
Man, that's a great question. I think it's hard to quantify in short words only because you'd have to have had an opportunity to experience it, right? Like some people learn the value of it by going on a missions trip. Some people learn it by becoming an instant caregiver to an ailing parent, right? Some people, right? Like if you've had an experience where you were either thrust or voluntold into serving, right? Then you kind of understand it. I guess the best way I can help the listener right now understand serving is it will help you understand the character that it takes to actually move people. If you can learn to serve the most difficult person, if you can learn to serve without the need to get something back, if you can learn to truly like be there just for the individual, and having a complete understanding that moment they might not care less about ever again. It's they just kind of walked in, got what they wanted, and left. Right? It's like if you worked at a Best Buy, right, and you just walk in and you say hi to somebody, right, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to pick up something great. They don't even think about the hi. They don't think about the person that when they got to the aisle that showed them where the thing is. They don't think about the person that checked them out. They don't even think about the people that put it all together to make it nice and neat for when you walked in. And, no one's thinking about that. They're just thinking about themselves. And so I think when you serve, and it helped me like a lot, because what's interesting is like, and I guess we can get to that later, like my wife, like that's the only way I was able to get my wife is because her love language was acts of service. And she's an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur herself. So it was like, that's a funny story about how we even got together. But like it's this, I think it's the one key that many of us sometimes forget. It's not that we don't know how to serve. If you got kids, come on, man. Like,
oh yeah.
Come on, like you get it, right? Like it's a thankless job, right? But I think you learn things that can help you at work, in tough times, when things are good. It can help you make sense of like what somebody else might be going through at a time, right? It's one of those things that I always say, like, I hope everybody takes an opportunity to actually choose to go serve, right? Like, go serve someone. Go see what that's like. Don't just go to the soup kitchen and go, do plates. No, actually like serve somebody like for real on a personal level. And I think it will humble all of us, right? It drops our ego. It stops us from having the insatiable desire to consume. And it just teaches us giving. So like even this podcast, right? Like y'all's podcast is serving somebody, right? Like there's somebody who's listening and they go, man, all right, I can do this one more day.
Facts.
So I hope that helps. It's hard to quantify serving, though. It's like,
no, that was good. That was excellent.
I think servitude helps develop gratitude. Because when you serve, right, you start to understand what it takes to do things. So when I take my kids into the grocery store, I tell them all the time, hey guys, look at this amazing fruit section. There's no bad apples. They're all beautiful. And they're even placed strategically in nice rows. I say, if you go to most countries, that doesn't exist. That seems silly. I'm like, but just notice it. Our produce has little sprinkles of water that come down every 5 minutes to make sure they're perfectly moist. It's ridiculous, right? And even then, we're still like, are these cucumbers good enough?
Right.
And I'm guilty, but I tell them all the time when I go in, I'm like, look how beautiful this area is, because we are like fruit connoisseurs. We take all of it, and I'm just happy that I afford to buy them as much fruit as they want, because so many families can't do that. I'm like, look, you can get as many strawberries as you want, that kind of thing. But so I think servitude develops gratitude, and I think it also helps develop empathy. So, for example, we like to go and there's a charity called Shoes for the Shoeless. I actually have a little thing right here, and we go and you actually take the shoes off of kids who don't have their families can't supply them with new shoes, and you put new shoes and socks on them, and they got super stinky feet. Some haven't been washed in weeks. But to get down on your knees and undo that and put them with new shoes and socks, and not sit there and be like, bro, your feet are kicking, right? They're little. Some are in high school. They're not all little. Some are like football players. But it just changes something inside of you. Can you talk to, though? I know we're talking a little bit about developing side hustles and so forth. Can you talk to how servitude helps somebody find their sort of purpose or calling?
Yeah. So I'm the youngest of 6 boys and no girls in the house. I'm observant by nature. Okay. One of the things about serving, I think that is helpful, your purpose, even taking the next step to figuring it out. I think what it does is it gives you the chance to see where you are based on, what level of serving you're doing, right? Like some people would have done those kids' shoes and like freaked out, right? So that let them know, like, I'm not that person, right? Or I've got some work to do on me to be willing to do that on a consistent basis, right? Some people, you've probably seen it before, right? Like some of the most non-criers might have gotten to that moment and might have broke down because they've never, you know what I mean? They never thought about how blessed they might have been, right?
Yep.
And so I think when you put yourself in a servant space and you're intentional about it, you start to learn more about yourself than you really do about the person that you serve, right? You start to figure out like, oh, I'm not as good with people who have cancer because maybe I never liked looking at my grandmother who died of cancer, right? Maybe, like you start to really figure out like how you relate to what's going on. And then eventually you start to realize, I got to put myself in the best light, in the best places where I'm going to serve. Or you find out that, you know what, I need to get better in that area. So let me keep digging that well. Right. I'm too shallow, of a person to get down in my nice blue jeans in that mud to, tie that kid's shoe or put on new shoes. So, you know what? I need to get better at that. So, you know what? I'm going to go back next year with John, right? I'm going to keep going back until I develop this habit. So I think it just gives you the chance to see where you are, right? And it lets you know where your character is. And it's not a bad thing. I think servant helps with your self-awareness, right? And so then you can, then no matter what you choose to do after that, you realize like who you are going into that thing. That's why I think it's super powerful.
But would you say servitude helps somebody get through when we're talking side hustles and stuff? I feel like servitude also helps somebody work through, or the passion and calling to serve somebody through whatever your business is helps you get through those trials, tribulations, over those mountains, so forth.
Yeah. In fact, I would say you learn to not take stuff so seriously. Because whoever you're serving, right? If there's a negative situation or maybe your business didn't deliver the way they thought it should, right? You learn to realize, okay, this is my opportunity to get better, right? I'm not going to blame whoever the person is, right? I'm not going to blame. I'm going to say, okay, what didn't we do? Is this a consistent problem, right? And let's figure out what needs to happen, right? Like I think you start thinking more solution oriented instead of having a problem with the problem, right?
Go ahead, bro.
Oh, you're good. What would you say like the first step is to someone who wants to start a side hustle or a side business? Like what is the first fundamental step in moving towards that goal?
That's a great question. I think the first thing I would say is it's really important to understand, how are you showing up right now at work? I think the one thing that we forget is that if you're at work and you're, pretty disengaged, I like to call it successfully discontent, right? Like there's a lot of people who they're successful, but they're successfully discontent. They're there, but they're not really there. They're a bit disengaged, they're wondering. And what I would say is check yourself about how you're showing up right now at your job. Secondly, are you in a role that can actually aid you in getting better, that will be a catalyst to the side business type that you want to start, right? So if I'm working, packing goods, okay, but I want to start, a sports, online store, well, I probably need to go work at Dick's Sporting Goods, right? So that I can start to be in those spaces, right? If I'm, if I can get there, then great. If I can't, then I got to start doing the studying at home. You got to also ask, I think the other important part is, how diligent are you with your time? Because if you're not really diligent, it's going to be very difficult, right? Like, it's difficult enough just to, run a job every day, get home, pick up the kids, get over to soccer practice, sit at practice for 40 minutes, get them in the car, get home, get dinner on it. Like, that's difficult enough. But if you don't have a really good self-discipline about time and what you're going to do when, then you need to work on that first. That's what I would say. Those two things, I think, how you're showing up at work every day and how you're disciplined today, I think are the first two things before you even get down the road and path of trying to figure out what you ultimately want to do.
Those things are really good. There was one thing that you said in there. You were talking about using an example of you wanted to open up a sports company, then probably start working at Dick's Sporting Goods, which to me speaks to the word exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how important is it that you put yourself in the right environment? It's like the person that says that's single, that wants to be married, but they don't go anywhere on the weekends. They're in the house 24/7.
Yeah.
You don't put yourself in an atmosphere to be found. You don't put yourself in an atmosphere to expose yourself to obtain what you're looking for, right? So how important is exposure?
Yeah, I think it's important. I also want to quantify exposure. Spending your time watching everybody's results on this is not good. That's not going to help you. That's not going to help, right? Good. Like it's. I was saying this earlier today in an interview. Like, some people's thumbs are so strong because we spend so much time scrolling through other people's lives that it's like, come on, man. Like, that's not going to help you, right?
You got to get those thumb gangs.
Yeah.
So what I would say is, you have to start exposing yourself to the totality of what that business is. You got to be willing to go, okay, if I want to do a e-commerce sports, business, right, where I'm drop shipping, sports equipment. Well, what does that even mean? What does drop shipping mean? Right. What does it mean? Where does my inventory store? Right? What the heck is FBA? Most people don't even know what an FBA is, right? Like, it's just being able to, like, go beyond what you want from the thing and really, like, taking a full spectrum look at what am I going to have to be responsible for? I say this all the time. Success is a thinking man and woman's game. And you have to think your way to what you want, because for too many of us, we're too comfortable in, like, several areas of our lives. So we see somebody else's results and then we go, oh, I want that. But you don't know the process and the things that they have in their life that make that result happen. And that you don't realize they're thinkers. Any successful person, go talk to them for 5 minutes. They're really great thinkers. They just think a lot more than the average person about the industry that they're actually dominating in, right? And so you have to, you honestly have to think. By the way, the book is called Think and Grow Rich, not Sit on the Couch and Grow Rich, not Netflix and Get Rich, not you literally have to sit down with a pad and a pen, write the vision, make it plain, right? Like, as a man thinketh, so is he. So it's, you literally have to take time and use this thing and go, what all encompasses that world that I'm saying, I want to be in. And then be honest with yourself. Like, am I willing to do that work? Because that's a different perspective of going into that world as a side business, right? Even if you love your corporate job right now, right? Like, there's a lot of people I know that they're actually good. They're not, like, hurting, but they they have other desires. There's things that they want to be able to do, right? And so they look at building a side business, but sometimes the work involved and the discipline it takes is why some people back away.
Wow. So I've heard a lot of people tell me they want to start a side hustle. Like, I started doing side hustles when they weren't cool. It was like, it was weird at the time. Now it's apparently very cool to do, but sorry, I wish I would have done it was cool. It'd been a lot easier and not getting criticized by your friends while you're not at the bar. But anyways, there's a lot of people that don't have a hard time, and I get this question all the time. Like, I don't know what to do. I just can't find the right fit. I don't know what my real purpose or passion is. All those things. I don't know what I'm good at, because I think so many people think about what they're good at as a physical trait type of thing, singing, playing ball, those types of things. How do you help somebody find where they can start in a side hustle, a side business?
It really goes back to that word exposure. But here's the other thing that we have to understand about work. And full disclaimer, what I'm about to say is in no way against any employment, okay? But you have to understand the psychology that goes into being an employee. Mm-hmm. Okay? I talk about this in my 5-day challenge. I run a 5-day side business challenge. And what I do is I help people based on what you just asked. That's what we're helping you answer, right? And it's because we got to start understanding we've been conditioned to work a certain way. We've been, and not in a bad way, it's just that your brain loves routine. Your job is built on your brain loving a routine, loving security, loving comfort, 2-week paycheck, week paycheck, or whatever, right? Whatever the case may be, right? And when your brain can get into a routine, it has to use less and less energy, because now it's moved it into basically autopilot, right? Here's a test. If you've ever driven to work or driven home from work or driven from picking up the kids and you were spaced out in the car and you don't even remember the in-between, that's called autopilot. Mm-hmm. It seems scary when you realize, I don't even remember how I got here, right? But it's normal, because you do it so routine, your brain doesn't have to use anything. It's muscle memory, right? The problem is, we don't realize you're fighting against that, trying to even go search for something different, because we've built all of this stock and energy and hours and effort into this role that we play in a large company, right? And while you're climbing that ladder, you're becoming more indoctrinated into that thing, right? And it's like the Matrix, right? It's like at some point, if you ever see a glitch, you're like, well, what was, hold on, what, did y'all see that? Like, and some people probably didn't see it, but you did, right? Most people feel it, right? They feel the gnawing questions they have in the back of their head about, is this all I'm going to do, right? They don't like the idea of, well, there's got, just work hard and, work on that 401k. Like, that's just not something that appeals to a lot of people anymore, because we've seen our grandparents not reap the rewards, and they fuss and they complain and they argue. And now we're seeing all of what they were promised now being gone, right? But you have this mental model of just keep working hard, just keep working hard, just keep working hard. And most people don't realize, if you keep working hard, you make less. And so the most difficult part of the journey is getting people to understand you are a very seasoned triple black belt employee. You have no skills in actual business development.
So how do they develop those skills?
So I think the first thing is, I want to show y'all something, because I like showing this stuff in real time, because I I don't like just saying, hey, this is what you should do. And then people go, yeah, okay, but I really do it. This is literally a stack of books I am reading right now. I have probably about 10, 11 books on my desk right now. Yeah. It's not because I'm a nerd, not because I necessarily love reading. It's because I am studying right now. I'm studying my industry of podcasting. I'm studying my ability of orating. I'm studying my ability of effective communication. I'm studying I'm studying my world because I need to get better. Because I know what I want to offer. I know what type of value I want to be able to bring. And I think to be able to find what you really want to do, it's just like our children. We let our kids play soccer one month, basketball another month, hockey another month. Like, we give them the chance to just like explore as much as you can, right? And I think as adults, we stop doing that for ourselves. We stop exploring and we stop giving ourselves experiences. And I think we've got to keep that going, because that's the only way you're going to figure out what you need. Again, if you're searching on social media and you're just looking at somebody else's results, that little dopamine hit to you in rush is nothing. That's not going to help you really decide if that's what you want to do. What'll help is you really exposing yourself to an industry and going to talking to people. Do you know there's things like Clubhouse, like when people are having some great conversations about their industry, they're deep diving, they're willing to share. You got to get on platforms and you got to use these social media platforms to learn now, right? And I think if you start using Facebook and Instagram and following the people who actually do whatever it is that you're interested in, take their courses, take their webinars, get their coaching. I think that will be the best thing you could ever do to decide if that's what you want.
A part of your life mission is to help men focus on growing up and leveling up. But we know that principle applies to men and women, right? What do you mean by that? Of course, one of the things that we say on the podcast all the time is about leveling up. So that really resonates with our audience. What does it mean when you say that to help people grow up and level up?
For me, it was a statement when I first wrote it, when I started my podcast, now over 5 years ago. It was a statement for me because that's where I was. I really take growth seriously. I take maturity seriously, right? Emotional maturity seriously. I take that seriously because I'm doing it, right? And it's always stuck with me because, again, being the youngest of 6, I observed a whole lot. And so I would see what people go through, where they would have pitfalls, how things would go wrong, how my brothers would utterly screw up certain things in life. And I would realize, like, I don't want that path, right? So I grew up really quickly, not just because we didn't have anything, but just because I was able to watch like the consequences of the way, things are. And so I always said, Chris, your only focus for a period of my time was like just growing you, like fall in love with like yourself, because the trinkets and all the other stuff, like, it's cool, but unfortunately those things won't make you have a great attitude about life. They won't help you learn emotional intelligence. They won't give you resolve. They don't help you learn how to deal with hard things. They don't put you in a position to learn how to make better decisions. They don't teach you how to ask better questions. Like, I like cars. I absolutely love cars. I'm a car guy. Just go check out my stuff. Like, I'm into cars, okay? But at the end of the day, that's just something I like. That doesn't make me grow, right? And I realize that. And so I take very seriously like my own growth. Like, I got 2 boys in high school right now. And one's about to graduate in May. The other one is going to be right behind him. And the biggest thing I've been talking about to them since they were, coming out of middle school was that, your you're in whatever you leave our home with when you go to college that you didn't take with you is not because we didn't teach it to you. It's a lack of focus and concentration on the principles that we're given, right? And so I try to model that with my kids as much as I can, because without it, I don't feel like I'm doing my job. So I just take growing up like real seriously. And as you saw, it was a play on the words because GRO is capitalized, but it's like, let that be the present way that you live your life every day, right? Like grow up mentally. Like if you haven't, I remember one of my mentors, very wealthy gentleman, he said something to me one time and I felt offended, but then I realized 2 days later, like, oh, he was right. He said, Chris, when's the last time you read a book? And that was all he said to me. And I'm like thinking, well, I called you for some advice and you're asking me like something, but I realized what he was saying. Like you're not even focused on the basics. So how do you think you're gonna learn that thing if you don't even pick up books to read?
Mm-hmm.
So the knowledge you have is based on how old? That's not gonna help. So that's why like I take like growing up like real serious, because I think growing is a maturity game, and you're gonna grow. Meaning if you choose to, right? Some people stop, but if you choose to, I think it can be pretty powerful.
Go ahead, Lafayette.
Always ask our guests, kind of the last segment, the wrap up, an off script moment, just whatever's on your heart. Give our audience that last thing that's on your heart that you feel led to leave us with.
Wow. I would say to the person that's listening to this or watching this, right? You're at work or you're at home, it's the end of the day, or maybe you're an early bird, and you catch up on UnScripted Podcast. I would say to you that I had a moment probably 2 months ago. I was dropping my son off to school because he missed his bus, but I was dropping him off to school and I drove past a cemetery and I pulled over. And I had this moment and it was like God was trying to get my attention. And I'm like, I don't ever pay this no attention. I see the doggone same cemetery every day. And I pulled over and I remember getting out of the car and it hit me like audibly I could hear, for me, a lot of people send their dreams to the cemetery ahead of their scheduled date. And they live the rest of their lives unfulfilled, not necessarily without purpose. You were given one when you got here. You just didn't choose to seek it out and mature it, right? And thus, they walk through life aimless and lethargic, right? And I just remember having that moment, and I'll just say to anybody listening, like if I want you to know, like your dreams don't have to go ahead of you and live in a cemetery before your date. You're not stuck. You're not like, don't keep saying things that reinforce a particular reality. You've got to start talking to yourself better. Like you've got to look at that breaking news billboard ticker that you got going across your brain that keeps spitting all of this negativity. And you've got to start re-engineering your words, because they're causing you to be where you are. And it might not feel good. The crazy part is you're in control of that part. A lot of times we'll say to ourselves, I don't control this. I don't control that. If you actually focused on the things that you actually do control, you'll find out the things that you can't control will not mean as much, because you will have maximized what you can control. Most of us don't maximize our relationships. We don't maximize our money. We don't maximize our attention. We don't maximize our faith. And so for anybody like watching or listening to this, like what would it feel like if you actually started maximizing your beliefs? What if you actually started telling, like, think about what you're thinking about. Like actually having a real conversation with yourself, writing down those negative thoughts and going, if somebody else spoke to themselves like that, you would be upset with them or you try to encourage them. And one thing I realize is that too many of us invest in so many other people and very little ourselves. And so I think in a world of make believe, as much as we see, and in a world of just walking by, always saying everything is all right, I think we got to stop saying that. I think we got to be honest with ourselves and say, nah, not everything is all right, but I'm working on it, right? I'm getting better. I'm putting some things in place. John, I like your point. Tonight, nah, I'm not going out this weekend. Fellas, y'all probably won't see me for a good month or so. The time and money I normally spend with y'all, I'm about to sit here and I'm going through this this webinar every weekend until I master this thing. Hey, I'm getting on the plane. No, I'm not going to hang out with y'all at that trip where I normally spend $2,000-$3,000 with y'all. I'm taking that same money and I'm going on a trip out here to LA to go learn this thing because somebody that I follow online does this event and I'm going to go learn. I think it's just when we speak to ourselves in certain ways, we reinforce suggestive ideas that don't come from God. They come from the enemy. He can't force you to do anything. He can suggest a lot of stuff to you, though. And if you allow those suggestions to turn into things that you begin to eat on, well, then you'll have what you have. But you do have the power to change what you're thinking about. And if you change your thoughts and you redirect your energy and you start speaking the things that aren't as though they were, your hands will start making a move. It's kind of like, right, if you said, I want a red Model 3 Tesla, guess what you're going to start seeing everywhere? A red Model 3 Tesla. Why? Because your brain will start being fixated on what you say. And then your body will start getting in momentum towards what you want. So be mindful of what we're saying to ourselves. Get rid of some of that stinking thinking and really start putting yourself in a better position and talk better to yourself, because you deserve much more than sometimes what we say to ourselves.
My God, Chris, I'm encouraged. I am encouraged. That was amazing. We want you to stay connected to Chris. You can do that several ways at the Christopher Williams on social media. That is his social media handle, at the Christopher Williams. And also listen to the T.W.A.C Podcast. Now, what does the T.W.A.C, what does that stand for? What does that stand for?
Yeah, that's the world according to Chris.
I love it. 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 Okay. I will definitely be tuning in and subscribe.
Can't forget that now, right?
The world according to Chris. I love it. I love that. I'm over here trying to rack my brain. What could this mean? Let me just ask them. I love it. Stay connected here to UnScripted. Follow us and become a part of our Patreon family for as little as $5 a month. Patreon.com/unscripted leadership with the D. And we can follow us on our social media platforms at Unscripted Leadership. Check out our website, unscriptedleadership.com. And of course, our podcast is available on all podcast platforms. We say thank you again to Chris Williams for having this amazing conversation with us tonight on the secret to building a successful side business. As always, we pray that you be the leader that God has called you to be. We are here to build bridges and not walls. Bridges connect and walls divide. Until next time,